Hey everyone. So today we are diving into a problem I think we've all felt. How to get actually useful, targeted results from AI coding assistants. We're going to explore this really powerful shift in how you think about it. Moving from just, basic prompting to something way more effective, the briefing.
You know that feeling, right? You spend all this time carefully putting together a question for an AI, you hit enter, and you get back something that, well, it's technically correct, but it completely misses the point of what you needed. It's super frustrating. But what if the problem isn't really the AI's answer, but the way we're asking the question in the first place? So to really get to the bottom of this, let's follow the story of a developer named Timothy. He was working with an AI called Claude Code, and he ran into this bizarre situation where he asked what he thought was the exact same question 2 times, but got 2 totally different results. One was useless, the other was perfect.
Okay, so check this out. The initial request was dead simple. Improve this function. The first time he asked, the answer was not helpful at all. The second time, it was exactly what he needed. So what changed? The only thing that changed was the context. He mentioned the function was for a payment system, that it had to be idempotent, and that they'd already tried a solution with retries and it failed. He thought all that was just irrelevant background noise. Turns out, he was dead wrong. This is where the story gets a brilliant twist. Timothy's mentor, Margaret, just completely reframes the whole problem with one simple question. She says, imagine you just hired a new, super smart engineer. Would you just point them to a function and say, improve this? Of course not. You'd give them the whole backstory, the purpose, the lay of the land. So why on earth would we treat a capable AI any differently?
And that simple idea leads us right to this core concept, the huge difference between making a request and providing a briefing. They might sound kind of similar, but trust me, they come from 2 completely different mindsets.
So here's the fundamental difference. A request just assumes shared context. You're just asking for a task to get done, like you're talking to someone who's already in the loop. A briefing, though, that's different. It assumes the AI is a capable partner who knows absolutely nothing about your specific project. Your job isn't just to ask for something. It's to bring them up to speed so they can actually do the right thing.
And this quote from Margaret just nails it. She points out that Timothy didn't actually ask the same question twice. The words were identical, sure, but the first time, the meaning was just gone. The real meaning of a question lives in all the information surrounding it. Without that, you've just got a bunch of empty words. So here's what's really happening in that empty space, in that vacuum of context. The AI doesn't just throw up its digital hands and say, I don't know. Nope. It pushes forward by filling in all the blanks with the most generic, most probable assumptions it can. So when you ask a general question, you are always going to get a general answer. One that's built for a common problem that probably isn't yours.
Okay, so we get it. We need to provide a briefing. But what does a good briefing actually look like? Well, this brings us to a super useful, actionable framework, the 4 pillars of context. These 4 pillars are the exact things Timothy included in his second try, the successful one. First, you've got intent, the why behind the request. Second, history. What have you already tried that didn't work? Third, constraints. What are the hard boundaries, the non-negotiables? And finally, edge cases. What are the tricky little scenarios that a good solution absolutely has to handle? This isn't just a list, it's a recipe for getting what you want.
And just look at this. This chart makes it so clear it's almost funny. Timothy's first prompt, the one that failed, it had exactly 0 of these pillars. He honestly thought he was asking the same question, but he wasn't. He was asking a completely different, way less meaningful one. All right, let's level up a bit and talk about a more advanced, but super powerful idea, using negative context. As Margaret calls it, this is all about describing the walls.
So what is negative context? It's all about defining the boundaries of the problem by explaining what's off limits. You're telling the AI about all the past attempts that blew up, the approaches it needs to avoid, and the constraints that rule out entire classes of solutions. It's one of the most powerful and most overlooked parts of a good briefing. And why is this so critical? Because these walls are almost always invisible. They don't live in the code itself. They live in that institutional knowledge that's stuck in people's heads, in painful lessons your team learned 6 months ago, or buried deep in some compliance document. Unless you explicitly state them, the AI has no way of even knowing they exist.
This quote just perfectly captures the danger here. When you leave out negative context, you're not just giving incomplete instructions. You're sending your very capable partner out to navigate this treacherous landscape totally blind to where all the cliffs are.
So far, we've really been talking about a briefing as this thing you do at the start of a chat. But what happens when the task is much bigger?
something long-running, like in an automated workflow or with an AI agent. The whole nature of context has to change.
For these longer, more complicated tasks, context isn't a one-and-done deal. It's not a document you hand over at the beginning. It becomes a continuous process. You have to maintain the context. The AI needs to know where it is, what's been decided, and what rules are still in play at every single step of the way.
And this gives rise to this cool idea of a running brief. Think of it less like handing over a document and more like tending to a relationship. It's this persistent awareness that you build with the AI over the entire lifetime of a task. You find that most failures in these complex AI systems aren't failures of capability, they're failures of context.
And now we get to the final and maybe the most profound insight from this whole thing. It's about what creating a good briefing does, not for the AI, but for you.
You see, Timothy had his big breakthrough, not when he read the AI's final answer, but in the process of writing the briefing itself. To explain the problem clearly enough for the AI to get it, he was forced to stop and think really deeply about his own problem. And in doing that, he realized he'd been focused on the wrong part of it the whole time.
And this is the ultimate takeaway. Articulating your intent, your history, your constraints, that's not just the prep work you do before you start thinking. Margaret argues that this process is the thinking. It is how you truly and deeply come to understand the problem you're trying to solve.
So, in that sense, the AI becomes way more than just a tool. It becomes a partner that, through the sheer discipline it demands for a good briefing, actually sharpens your own analytical skills. You learn to understand your own needs better, simply by trying to explain them with precision.
And that leaves us with one final question to really chew on. When you interact with an AI, are you just using a tool to get an answer? Or are you looking into a mirror that reflects the clarity, or maybe the confusion, of your own thinking? The quality of what you get back might just tell you more about yourself than it does about the AI. Thanks for joining me.